Confessions of a Lovesick Viking by Emmertscape. Chapter 8. Anticipation. Hiccup stared at the ceiling with his arms crossed behind his head. Toothless snored softly from his slab of rock a few feet away, oblivious to his rider's wakefulness. He had woken an hour prior to now, his body deciding that it was time to wake up and smell the roses, or just start stressing and panicking. That sounded more like it. His stomach knotted and twisted every few minutes at the thought of proposing. "It's tomorrow," he whispered to himself, trying to alleviate some of the butterflies. Maybe saying it out loud would make it better. "I love Astrid Hofferson, and tomorrow I'm asking her to marry me." Toothless's ear twitched at the sound of soft words coming from his rider's lips. Hiccup's stomach rolled again, and he flipped to his side with a groan and covering his head with his blanket. "Stupid, stupid, stupid," he muttered. Toothless opened his eyes and watched his boy, wondering if he was just talking in his sleep, as he usually did. But instinct told him otherwise. Hiccup had actual emotion in his voice this morning instead of the groggy, muffled, sluggish words reserved for talking in his sleep. The dragon stood, stretched his limbs, and yawned before padding over to Hiccup's bed. The young man's right arm dangled out from under the blanket, his fingertips nearly brushing the floor. Toothless nudged his arm with his nose and gave him a soft coo. Hiccup sighed and emerged from the depths of his bedcover. "Hey, bud." He rubbed his dragon's nose. He lightly winced at the blisters covering his palm and fingers from more archery practice the night before. Toothless hummed against his palm as if to ask what was wrong. The look in the dragon's eyes spoke for him. Just life." Hiccup frowned, resting his head on his left elbow. "Nothing's normal anymore. A guy just can't catch a break from people, and when he does, his own body turns against him and wakes him up before the dragon. And that's saying something." Toothless's chest rumbled and a dragon chuckled. Hiccup cracked a smile. Whatever. I'm just nervous, which I shouldn't be considering I just told her I love her last night. Why is this any different?" He almost felt like a little kid back when he'd watch Astrid from the other end of the square thinking she was the prettiest thing to set foot in Burke. But the second she'd give him a glance, he'd clam up, say something stupid, or do something stupid. But it all turned out right in the end, didn't it? They loved each other. They knew they'd be together forever. Everyone knew they would be together forever, even other tribes who had visited, or attacked, in recent years. So why couldn't he just pop the blasted question now that the time was almost upon him? Hiccup looked up at Toothless, who was looking up at the hatch in the ceiling. He smiled and threw off the covers. "All right, enough moping. Let's fly." The time would come soon enough, but he had to distract himself with something in the meantime. The boys laughed at the edge of the square The boys landed at the edge of the square just as the sun was lifting over the horizon, sending a deep orange hue across the sky. Hiccup smiled up at the beautiful color, deciding that sunrises were more preferred over sunsets. He saw them less often, which made them more special. Toothless lumbered to a barrel of fish nearby, sticking his head in instantly. Hiccup winced. "I hope those didn't belong to anyone in particular." "No, they're just sitting up for no reason." A deep voice chuckled from behind him. Hiccup turned and nearly jumped out of his skin. Olaf. But he managed to smile. "Morning." "Good morning," Olaf greeted, deeply taking in the brisk morning air. "You're up early." Hiccup shrugged. "Yeah, I woke up a few hours ago." "You always the early bird?" "Sadly, a certain night fury ground early mornings into me that first year together. Needless to say, the latest I've slept in as of late has been 7 in the morning. Hiccup shot Toothless a dirty look, who sniffed innocently. Olaf chuckled. "Sounds like fun." He patted Toothless on the head when he sat between the two men. "So, Astrid tells me you've picked up archery." Hiccup gulped and nodded. "Yeah." Olaf raised an eyebrow with a smirk. "Care to show me?" Hiccup managed a short laugh. "Well, that was the agreement." "I thought you'd say that." Olaf followed Hiccup to his house, where he retrieved his bow and arrows. Toothless stood beside Olaf as Hiccup prepared the targets in the backyard and began to notch an arrow. However, it was nearly impossible because his arms and hands shook so badly, and his fingers just wouldn't hold still long enough for him to properly hold the arrow. Olaf finally rested a hand on Hiccup's shoulder. Hiccup looked at him in surprise, but the man had a gentle, calm smile on his face. "Relax. She told me you were good. Just pretend I'm not here." Hiccup slowly exhaled and looked back at the target 15 yards ahead of him. "I can do this." He raised the bow, notched the arrow. He focused on everything Astrid taught him, pulling the string taut against his lip. "This is for you, Astrid." He released the arrow, and it hit a perfect bullseye. Olaf raised his eyebrows, but Hiccup wasn't done. He wasn't sure really how much Olaf wanted to see, but he decided since he was focused that he would keep going. He aimed at some targets hanging in a tree and released 3 consecutive arrows, hitting all on center. The remaining 8 targets on the ground or in trees fared no better. Hiccup's aim was precise. Olaf finally slapped a hand on Hiccup's shoulder with a small laugh. "You really are good with a bow." Hiccup let the bow rest at his side. "You'd think I would have figured it out years ago." "Ah." Olaf shook his head. "It matters not when one learns. It is that one learns at all." Hiccup smiled. "I'm glad you told me to do this. I wouldn't have done this by choice, but I'm glad that I have a way to protect people now." The other man nodded. "It's amazing you can protect our people with Toothless, but if he happens to not be there, you will need a way to protect what is yours. This is a perfect example." Hiccup nodded nervously, his mouth going dry. "So?" Olaf stuck out a hand suddenly, and Hiccup's insides tightened. He grasped his end firmly, and Olaf heartily slapped the top of it with his other end. "She's all yours, son." Unexplainable joy blew up inside him, and it was all Hiccup could do to not jump up and down and freak out loud. "Thank you," he managed to choke out, the joyful grin unable to come off his face. Olaf pulled him in for a hug, almost as excited as the young man was. Hiccup suddenly realized not only how wise the man was, but also how loving. He really cared about his daughter like nothing else, but it was clear that Olaf would stand by him, as if he was his own son. They bowled away as a voice sounded from near the haddock house. "Is the deal sealed, then?" The men watched Stoic walk toward them across the lawn, and both nodded. Stoic thumped his son in the back. Things are about to get a whole lot brighter around here." Hiccup bounced on the balls of his feet. "Guys, I want to ask her now!" "Go!" Olaf shooted with a laugh. "No!" Stoic snorted with an eyebrow. "He has a crazy system." "It's not a crazy system. It's a method to my madness," Hiccup argued. "I have everything ready. I just have to cope through today." "You could just spare yourself the stress. You're giving me gray hair." Stoic sighed heavily. Olaf slapped his chief on the shoulder. "Let it be, Stoic. It's not every day a man proposes." Hiccup smirked at his father, loving Olaf more and more each day. "You should take lessons from him, Dad. He knows what he's talking about." The rest of the day was torture for Hiccup. He almost hoped he wouldn't see Astrid at all that day for fear of spilling the beans, but alas, she ended up by his side all day long. She joined him in the forge around 10 in the morning just to silently observe his work, although he was convinced his short sleeves had something to do with it. Gabber and Gustav frequently complained or made gagging noises at their constant flirting, but the couple ignored them. However, Gustav stated at one point, "As long as I don't have to sit through any snogging lessons, I'm fine." The couple was sorely tempted to do it just to tease him, but they refrained. Hiccup was especially not kissing her that day because he knew there would be no stopping his mouth from running faster than his thoughts. He would end up spoiling the surprise, no doubt about it. Astrid left around noon to fetch the 4 of them some lunch and came back with a basket of sandwiches and a few water packs. The group ate lunch together, chatting lightly about various things. Hiccup constantly poked Gustav to find out if he had a girl in his sights, but the young teen was very harsh in his gaze and refused to respond. Gabber took a swig of his drink before turning to Hiccup. "What did you ever do with that gold?" Hiccup snapped his gaze to him. Astrid and Gustav perked instantly. "You found gold? When? What did you make?" He glared at Gabber hard, who raised an eyebrow. He could feel the back of his neck and ears beginning to burn at his own silence, but he would not. Odin cursed him. He would not spoil it now. Gabber finally blinked. "Oh, that's right, you made it." Hiccup lunged forward and tackled him to the ground in a speed formerly unknown to him. Astrid jumped up. "Hiccup! Shut up, Gabber!" Hiccup yelled, his knees pinning the older man down by the shoulders and his hands firmly clamped on his mouth. "Shut up!" Gabber stared at him in confusion, then his eyes drifted to Astrid and they barked. "What?" Hiccup narrowed his eyes, carefully removing his hands. "Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry," Gabber shouted, shoving the young man off of him. "Forgot about what?" Astrid asked, raising an eyebrow at them. "Nothing," both men shouted. Astrid shared a skeptical glance with Gustav. "What did you make with the gold?" Gustav asked. Hiccup slowly turned to Gabber with a glare deeper than the ocean. "I'm going to kill you," he whispered. "It was an accident.
You couldn't ask when she wasn't... He paused with a glance at his girlfriend. You want to ask her that now?
Hiccup, would you just tell me what's going on?
Astrid finally asked, crossing her arms and gaining their attention. Hiccup's eyes widened. What can be so... Nope, we're not talking about it! Hiccup scrambled off the ground and walked around her. But... She turned to look at him, but he started banging on a bent sword seconds later, officially closing the conversation. She pouted, but knew she had to let it go. Her birthday was tomorrow. After all, she could only hope and pray that she would finally be told what the secret was by then. If not, Odin help her boyfriend.